Hello, everyone! Welcome to the very first episode of my Session Storytime series, where I'm going to be retelling the events of SRA from start to finish, just the way it happened. This time, I'm going to be telling the story of this campaign's humble beginnings, back when we had no idea it was going to turn into something so monumental for us all. And by us all, I mean me. Specifically me. SRA started off as a goofy playtest for a couple of characters that me and my other player were going to use in a completely different, more serious campaign. These characters were Lepidoptera, a necromantic druid goat centaur that we had to homebrew pretty much everything for, and Sylvaeus, a fey-blooded sorcerer archer who ended up using his, Cupid's arrow more than his bow to solve problems, so to speak. We'd both been mysteriously teleported from our respective homelands to an unknown location, smack dab in the middle of the forest. We became fast friends in our shared confusion, and by the time we made it out of the woods, it was as if we'd known each other our whole lives. This was all determined way later in the campaign, though. No, where we actually started was not Rome. No, seriously, that's the name, not Rome, all one word. Being his first time running a game, in terms of improv, our DM dared to go where even some of the most seasoned DMs dare not venture. And by that I mean he came up with the dumbest thing he could and rolled with it. Obviously, us players absolutely loved it, and so that's the naming style that we've kept to this very day. Now, we were presented with a couple of different options of where to go and what to do, but wanting to lean right into the typical adventuring party stereotype, we first headed to the local unnamed tavern that my DM has, as I'm writing this script right before my very eyes, informed me is now the Bottomless Cauldron, just to spite me. Thank you. The tavern was small and quaint, with a couple of old men playing backgammon and a cheerful barmaid who we quickly befriended. Her name was Melody, and she was nearly instantly infatuated with Sylvaeus' equally cheerful demeanor and charming smile. Long, almost iridescent hair, glimmering green eyes, and the sweetest, most genuine smile. Needless to say, they got along quite well, as Sylvaeus did with just about everyone. What was a little off-putting, though, was how much the tavern keeper's daughter seemed to take to Sylvaeus, too. But we didn't think too much of it. We got a couple bowls of the best Nat 20 broccoli cheese soup in the entire world, and we went along our merry way. Friendships made and bellies full, we headed back out the way we came, and our DM presented us with the same options. There were quite a few good ones, too. There was a bazaar, a gladiator ring, an avenue to the wealthier side of town, and a literal alleyway, full of shit and rats. You can guess which one we chose. Naturally, as the campaign started as a goofy, meaningless one, we chose, and you guessed it, the alleyway. Woo! Our DM had us roll a couple of times, to which I passed with flying colors, and Sylvaeus slipped a lot and fell a lot. You know, those fancy, pretty little shoes of his really didn't help him in this type of, terrain. But after much slipping and sliding, we found ourselves face to face with an enormous rat, and I mean just a massive rat, just a heckin' chonker of a rat, like approximately the size of a small child, just screeching and foaming at the mouth, clearly rabid. So, doing what any druid would do, I went up and just cured him, just like that. It really was as simple as grabbing him by his weirdly buff little rat shoulders and casting Lesser Restoration. And then, with my ability to speak to animals, I listened to what he had to say.
The name's Don Rat. Me and my boys, you see, we're starving here, girlie. If you rustle us up some grub, I'll forever be in your debt. You hear?
Being deeply empathetic, I relayed the information to Sylvaeus since I was the only one that could understand him, but he agreed that the two of us should do something for the poor guy and his starving rat crew. We headed back to the tavern for a short moment to grab some bread and cheese, bringing it back to the group of hungry rodents. They thanked us profusely, and from that moment onwards, we had an ally in Don and his gang. So, satisfied by a job well done, we headed back and found ourselves wandering to the bazaar. It was lively, bustling with people and merchants, and we shopped around for a while. I even got a matching pair of jade earrings and a necklace. Although, and I'll tell you this now, I never ended up wearing them. They sure were beautiful, though. More interesting than that, however, was one particular merchant, an old man with a long white beard that flowed to his ankles, loudly declaring to the world and to anyone who walked by,
"Spin my wheel."
Okay, so, this was, by far, the most interesting NPC we'd encountered so far by a long shot, and we were immediately enamored with him. Of course, we go up to him and pay the 1 gold fee to spin his wheel, and we ended up winning some meaningless little trinkets that I honestly can't remember. What was more valuable, however, was what he gave to us free of charge. His name. His name was Merlin. A funky old wizard guy named Merlin. It was perfect. I don't know why, but everything about this was just hitting differently for me, and we just kind of fell in love with the little old dude. For now, though, we bid him a good day and started our walk back to the tavern. It was an uneventful, peaceful stroll for the most part, until we heard a scream from a nearby alleyway. Of course, having chronic main character syndrome, we leapt into action, darting down the alleyways to find the source of the noise, only to find a man staggering and stumbling, blood gushing profusely from a stab wound in his side, while a shadowy figure disappeared around the corner. He collapsed at Sylvaeus' feet, my hooves, and we scooped him up and rushed him into the tavern. Picking an empty table, we laid him out, and I distinctly remember asking if anyone was a doctor, and, luckily enough, a small man in a plague doctor outfit rushed to our aid. Together, with the help of my magic, the doctor's surgical kit, and some very strong alcohol that we probably couldn't afford, both for sterilization and for the poor man getting operated on, we managed to close and mostly heal the wound. With my healing magic, he was really almost as good as new, and even felt good enough to thank us profusely, our second time being hailed as heroes in one day. Don't worry, things do get harder for us eventually. It can't be sunshine and rainbows all the time. But speaking of sunshine, this man just positively radiated it. He was nearly glowing with gratitude, and even invited us back to his manor for the night, and naturally we accepted. No way were we gonna drop gold on a room at an inn if we could stay in a luxurious manor for a night. Yeah, as it turns out, this guy was a nobleman, and a well-known one at that. His name was Charles Astoris, and like many people we met that day, we'd immediately befriended him. But this time, we'd befriended someone of status. Thankfully, the trip through the wealthy part of town was actually peaceful and uneventful this time, and we arrived at a huge gated manor with the Astoris family crest on it, a ram with a strange vine that I later learned was a gringleberry vine. Gringleberry. We went in and were greeted by rows and rows of maids and butlers, all waiting on us hand and foot and hoof. It seemed like something Sylvaeus, having been a nobleman himself before being transported to this strange new world, was used to, but I, hailing from the outer planes, and having no concept of nobility before this, was so out of my depth. We were also greeted by our new friend's father, Marlin, not Merlin, but Marlin, who instantly took a liking to me, though I hadn't a clue why at the time. I will admit, I was more than relieved to see that most, if not all, of the maids in this place were folk that were more like me than the rest of the people I'd met thus far. Though they all walked on 2 legs, many of the maids looked like various creatures harmoniously blended with humans. Some resembled cats, some dogs, even a bird-like woman here and there, and I had come to learn that I resembled something that's called a goat. So I felt a sort of kinship with them, and it seemed like they also saw some sort of resemblance of themselves in me, because we got along splendidly. We had a wonderful dinner with Charles and his father. We learned that his mother and younger brother were off on a business trip to one of their main candy factories in Steamtopia. Apparently, they owned a huge candy-making monopoly of sorts, and Charles was their poster boy, and heir. Eventually, we turned in for the night. At some point before we headed to our room, Marlin spoke to me privately and invited me to play a game of chess with him, though I unfortunately had to let him know that I'd never heard of the game before and I didn't know how. Charles did teach me later, though he looked a bit taken aback when I told him about it. I won't go too much into detail about this now, but remember this, it becomes relevant in what will probably be many episodes. Having been fed, entertained, and now given a lovely soft bed to sleep in, Sylvaeus and I decided to turn in for the night at this point, which was our first night in civilization since we'd appeared in this world. With that, we hunkered down and drifted off to sleep, warm and cozy both physically and in our hearts. That's all for this time. I'm not actually sure where the first session ended since this was all before I started taking session notes, and this was actually probably more like 3 or 4 sessions, but this is as good of a spot as any to leave it off. We did a lot of good and made a lot of friends this time around. Saving Dawn from rabies and starvation, and saving Charles from his stab wound would really set a trend for how we handled situations going forward. What can I say? We're the main characters in this story, so we might as well act like it. Tune in next time to see who we manage to befriend next. And if you enjoyed this session story time and want to see where it goes from here, please subscribe, drop a like, and comment if there's anything you particularly liked or would love to see. I love hearing feedback from you guys, and I also love hearing constructive criticism, so if you've got something to say, I'm all ears. Remember to take care of yourselves, everyone. Have a great day, and I can't wait to see you all next time.